Hello, Lisa here. Welcome back to my channel, or welcome if this is your first time visiting me. Today we are going to be doing a walkthrough, a deep dive actually, of a deck I've had since before I started my channel, and I've never done a walkthrough or a review of specifically. So this is going to be a walkthrough of the Fountain Tarot. Let's get into it. Now, if you haven't heard of the Fountain Tarot, where have you been? This deck has been out for a while. I'm pretty sure it came out as an independent deck first and then got picked up for mass market. The publisher is Roost Books. I can't read. And this is just a really great all-rounder type of deck. So let's get into it. It does come in a really nice box, and it's funny because this is the box that spoiled me, or that made me want this type of box. I love that it's magnetic and it opens up all the way. I don't know why I like that. I like other types of boxes too. It's not that I like this box exclusively. There's something satisfying about it. I really like it. And it has a ribbon closure, a really nice perfect bound book. And I feel like, and it's linen bound. The cover is a linen texture. I really feel like this is one of the first decks that did that, but maybe not. And then it is a gilded deck. My gilding is a little bit beat up, but it's a silver gilding. This was also the first deck I think I ever had that had a gilding color other than gold. So the silver was really nice on this one. And it also has a extra card, which is just, we hope the Fountain Tarot brings you joy, clarity, and inspiration. Now, again, I bought my copy quite some time ago. I don't know if it is packaged differently now, or if the cardstock has changed or any of that kind of thing. But I've definitely had mine for, I want to say, at least 4 years, maybe 5 years. Well, it should say when this was published. Oh, my copy is, I don't think that's signed for real, but it looks signed for real. It's probably a photocopy of the signature, but it looks signed by the creators. What does it say for publication date? Does it say 2017? So that is, I probably got it near the end of 2017 or the beginning of 2018, I would guess. But yeah, the guidebook has a full page per. We'll look at that some more in a little bit. For now, I'm going to put the guidebook aside. I've already put the deck back into its original, well, what I see as its proper order. Let's see anything else anatomy-wise about the card. It's a standard tarot size. That is what the backings look like. And if you look up real close, there is some kind of copyright in the lower right-hand corner, but to be honest, I have never noticed it until right this minute. So that is it. Now, what I want to talk a little bit about, as we get zoomed in and get ready here, this deck does have some words that get attributed to it pretty often. I've heard it referred to as cold. I like to use the word clean for this deck. It feels very neutral. It doesn't feel, it feels, the way I see it, I tend to see it as a more masculine deck, like in its energy, in the deck itself's energy, not necessarily the characters in the deck, although I will say maybe we do see more masculine figures, I'm not sure, but it always just feels a little bit masculine to me. I like the color palette. It's got a kind of, it reminds me of like soap, like a bar of blue and white swirly soap. And, that's the vibe of this deck. It feels clean. It feels fresh. There's something about it that feels neutral, as I mentioned. So these are the keywords I would use to describe it. But some people have described this deck as cold. So I have heard that quite a bit. I've never gotten that from this. It actually feels very dynamic. I feel like there's a lot of movement. And I really feel like each card comes alive. So let's go through it, and I'll just talk through my perceptions as we go. So here we have the Fool, and I get this feeling of like diving off a mountain, maybe even like leaping over or leaping from like a mountaintop to mountaintop, or from like a glacier to another glacier, something like that. It feels very dynamic. We get the blur of the movement. I really like the freedom in that card. This Magician to me is really, really wonderful. He seems honed in on details. He has the tools, but he's also looking you sort of dead in the eye, and I really like that. I like that it feels a little bit magical. We get a little bit of that sort of magical vibe, just in the way that this character is portrayed. But also we have all the symbols that we would be looking for typically. We have the 4 suit symbols, but we also have this lemniscate visible here. This is an iconic High Priestess for me personally. I really, really love this image. And in fact, when I do any kind of journey work or astral travel and I'm working with the High Priestess energy, this is kind of how I see her. Particularly, I really like that instead of the dark and the light columns that we typically would see in a High Priestess card, we have these curtains, the dark and the light curtains, because there is that air of like mystery, and we're not seeing everything that we get in this card. It has that ethereal moon vibe, moon intuitive vibe. I just love it. I love that we can see the moon in the background. It's just beautiful. Next we have the Empress. I like that her feet are in the water. We get that sense of the water element here. She's a little bit cloaked and covered, but she isn't visibly pregnant. We're not really honing in on that. We're looking at, to me, I see lush green growth and that nurturing Mama Earth kind of energy to her. This is also an Emperor that I feel like really helped me to wrap my brain around how I engage with the Emperor card. This Emperor is surrounded by these stable structures. Numerology, I will say, is very strong in this deck. If you really really enjoy numerological meanings of the cards, I feel like the numerological associations are kind of highlighted in many cards throughout this deck, and this is definitely one of them. The 4 is strong here, right? We have that square, that foundation, that sturdiness, that strength, but also the idea that we could be very rigid or boxed in. So you get like a lot to work with, I feel like, visually in this card. We have this figure sort of in this box. Yeah, I really like that. I also love this Hierophant. I like that it is this sort of older figure looking here who's peeking open, who's opening this box of sort of spiritual knowledge or wisdom. There's an element of sort of like looking deeper, looking for that knowledge, looking for the wisdom, looking for what exists already in canon, right? Like I feel like that energy with this, and I really appreciate that image. This is great to me because there's not really an implied gender here. We just see 2 figures and this really shining meeting point in the center where there's light, where their 2 hands are joining. What I also really like about this is this bubble, this idea that we're forming we're forming a new thing together. We're forming this relationship is becoming its own entity. There's this to me really focuses on that connection with others more than, to me, it focuses on the element of choice, but it is obviously always present in the card. But here I really like the highlight of these 2 souls coming together and that joining point, but also this bubble around them. The Chariot. This is classic to me Chariot in that we have these 2, a dark and a light horse sort of pulling in opposite directions, but these horses are not real. Like you can tell that they're kind of transparent. And so our figure here is holding the reins. It looks to me like there is actually a reversed pentagram on their shirt. I don't know if that's intentional or not, but it has that sort of earthbound feeling to it, right? That this character is steady and is focused straight ahead despite the fact that these 2 creatures are pulling in opposite directions. And I think the taut reins kind of highlight that energy, that trying to bring these chaotic forces into focus. I think this is great. This feels like a really big lion, and it almost looks like she's riding the lion and has wrapped her head around to its cheek. This almost gives me lion dragon vibes, like Eastern lion dragon. I'm really bad at knowing the right term for that. I'm so sorry. But there's the Eastern dragons can look lionish, like in those parades. Again, oh my gosh, all the wrong words. I'm so sorry. But like, I'm just giving you my off the cuff feelings as I'm having them. So I didn't have time to think ahead and look it up. But it's giving me that kind of vibes. Like there's this like really intense, powerful, regal energy, and we are harmonizing with it, which I really love. And this Hermit to me gives me all the vibes of like that explorative quality, right? We have this light bar behind this figure that almost to me looks like a door that is just closing or has just opened or something. Like I think it's meant to be their staff, and it's like a glowing staff, but it almost gives me, every time I see it, I almost see like a portal that's recently closed or is opening, and this hermit is kind of like exploring in this like mysterious dark land and is just shining the light into very specific areas where they want to look. And I feel like that's a beautiful metaphor for the work of the hermit. I like the chaotic energy in this wheel card. We feel it looks almost like a gyroscope. I think that's probably intentional, and our figure seems like they're in it. And it reminds me a lot of being on like a roller coaster ride or a amusement park ride. And it also reminds me of an analogy I like to use with the wheel card about how we engage with a ride or a dynamic physical experience can really show our relationship with how comfortable we are with change. Do we like really want to feel it as big as possible? Like, do we resist it and feel it really big? Or do we harmonize with it and then like let it feel like almost peaceful, almost meditative? And I feel like this invites that exploration. And the Justice card. I think what I like the most about this is the clean lines and the balanced scales. I feel like the person or the human figure is faded into the background, like justice is at the forefront, and any opinions or interference, human interference, is sort of faded into the background. It almost speaks more to me of like divine justice, of karma, like factors of every action has a reaction, like what's the word for that? You know, like the kind of justice that is like just happens. Like when you make a choice, you have a consequence. You do a thing, there's a reaction, that kind of thing. This Hanged Man always feels a little bit odd to me. I don't know why. It's never been quite my favorite. Maybe it's too angular. Maybe it's just the borders. It just feels too surreal in some way. The figure seems to be dangling from pure light, like over the ocean. I don't know. This one doesn't hit me particularly great, but it works fine for me as a Hanged One card. Y'all, I've had so many issues with this card because I feel like I'm not seeing it correctly. It's always looked to me a little bit like a printing error. And I've brought this up in live streams and chats before. And I think what I've landed on is this. Because there's an earlier card where this effect sort of happens. And it's the Chariot. So let's just pull that out so we can see what we're seeing here. See how these kind of have a similar feel? Well, what we're seeing is a dark sky and a light ground, right? So this is the horizon line. And the horses are just transparent. So we can see the horizon line through the horses. That makes sense to me in this image. In this one, I guess it just took me a long time to realize that that is the horizon line and that the horse is more forward. This spectral being is more forward than that. And so what we're seeing is this horizon line, but this ghostly horse is coming towards us. And the ground almost looks kind of reflective and almost foggy. But because this horse is also sort of ethereal, it's just a really interesting card because it messes with my head a little bit on the perspectives. But now that I see that as the horizon line, it makes more sense to me. I also like that this spectral horse is coming forward through this gate of some kind, this portal created by these trees, and there's a skull up there at the pinnacle of that. You'll notice I feel like there's a lot of geometry in these cards, and you can kind of see that hinted at with the back design. There's a lot of geometric shapes. There's a lot of angles and lines. Here we have the Temperance card. I don't have strong thoughts on this one way or another. I do see that this character's in water and that there seems to be, they've got 1 foot in water, 1 foot on land technically, but they're almost fully in it. They're pouring the liquid or whatever it is back and forth from these two sort of cosmic vessels. This almost reminds me more of the Thoth star card the Thoth Temperance card in a way, this idea of like this more universal adjustment happening. And then we have the Devil card. This is, again, we have a lot of this geometry, a lot of this kind of blurring of figures. They're kind of blending together in a way. There's this really cool, strong symmetry in all the artwork. But here we really get the feeling of being bound, but there's no real sense that we're physically bound to anything. Like there's this sort of figure in the background, but there's no sign of physical chains, and yet they look attached to it anyway. To me, it almost reads a little bit like the ways that we get attached to habits or things, but it's like the line between us and whatever it is has blurred, and we've kind of become absorbed into it in a way, and we've lost a bit of ourselves. That's what that feels like. I've also really liked this tower for a long time. It's so weirdly sci-fi, and yet the geometry of it, the idea that this tower was already built on this really precarious point here, where, yeah, it's definitely exploding and it's definitely falling. We can read this a couple ways. We can read it that the foundation is staying strong and is still intact, but we can also read it that it was poorly built in the first place, right? And I mean, I'm sure that this is technically a structure that could do fine, typically, but there are better shapes for sturdiness, for having a strong foundation. Typically, we'd want our widest point at the bottom so that we're really steady. I don't know, I feel like I can definitely go in a lot of different directions with that. I can't help it, y'all. She's dancing or swinging from a piece of starlight, which I think is so beautiful. And I said she, but I think it's pretty clear in many of these cards that some of the figures are very obviously intentionally kind of ambiguous with their gender, and I like that. But I have a hard time not seeing like a stripping pole, right? Like a stripper pole. Is there like a more classy way to express that? I don't know. Is there a better word for that? Anyways, I always see that. But I do think there's freedom here. And the idea to me that you're dancing on the light of the star is so beautiful as a concept, right? That we're not only following our true north, but we're sort of dancing with our destiny, and we're sort of reconnecting to what's true about us. And I just love the ocean water in this moon card. It's so dynamic and gorgeous. And we have the dog and the wolf, but again, they're ethereal. They're sort of semi-transparent. They're not opaque. They're not present. They're more like symbols of the domesticity and the wild within us and the ways in which we might balance it. I adore this sun card. So just like in the star card where we were dancing with the rays of light of the sun, here we have a child who's swinging from swings coming from the rays of light sorry, this was from the star. The star one was about the starlight, dancing with the starlight. Here we're dancing, or we're riding the sunlight. There's a thing here to me, specifically potent for me personally, with the symbolism of a swing, because the swings for me were a therapeutic way for me to connect to a sense of individuality and freedom, and being able to be myself and just have a moment of pureness that was unsullied by drama and other people's stuff. And so there's a real strong component here that really speaks to me personally in a really incredible way. But the idea of just being in joy, like being in the full light of the sun and being in joy, is really powerfully illustrated here. This Judgment card is so trippy to me. I don't know why. This isn't always been my favorite, but I do see what's happening. It's just it's an odd perspective. So typically in Judgment, we would have this horn, right? We would have an angel calling or something, and this invitation to sort of rise up and evolve. And that rising up and evolving is happening, but it almost looks like this is the horn, or these are the horns that are doing that. And it almost appears as though like we see a figure sort of pushing up through this almost like membrane. It feels like birth, right? It feels like they're pushing through a membrane and they're being reborn or born, which is really a beautiful, what's the word I'm looking for? Like metaphor for the idea of judgment, that there is this rebirth happening, that we are choosing a new life. We're going to burst forward as the better version of ourselves, and we're going to choose that, right? Like there's a real strong rebirth element to the way this is depicted. It's just so trippy to me because I haven't seen anybody do anything like that. Here we have the world. This is a little blah to me personally, not going to lie. It feels like it works just fine as a world card. I guess I kind of want more. She's not dancing. I don't know. I feel like I want more from the world card. So this one is kind of meh for me, but the art is beautiful. And then we have the fountain card. I always go back and forth about whether to read with this or not. But I'll read you what the guidebook has to say about it. This is their extra major arcana card. So it says the fountain exists. So the key word is be. B-E, just the word be. And it says the fountain exists outside and beyond the cycles of birth, death, time, and form. It is the nameless, changeless source of which everything is a part. It is the waking from the dream of separateness and identity and the recognition of oneself as not only connected to all things, but all things, divine nature. When the fountain appears in your reading, relinquish all illusion of control and remain quiet. It invites you to observe, master less, and to just be, effortless and indistinguishable from life. You are the voice and the breath of universes. And then the meaning is oneness, a moment of cosmic clarity, fully awake, the end of seeking, enlightened being, surrender to that which you are whole and perfect. And it says identification. So the reverse meaning is identification with a role or personality, fear of being alone, mind obsessed, separation from source, resistance to or denial of reality. So it does have a lot of potency to it. It's just that intuitively the image doesn't do a lot for me for what it's supposed to represent. So that brings us to the wand suits. The Ace of Wands is very dynamic. We have this golden light. We really feel like we're in the suit of fire. I like the Two of Wands. This definitely feels like chopsticks to me, but it also invites the idea of the potential for travel or of trying new things, exploring outside your comfort zone. So I really like that. And then here we have that pulling in energy. We're sort of drawing towards us or manifesting what it is we want to create. So there's definitely a growth or creation aspect happening here. And here we have the Four of Wands, where these people have come together. They're sort of celebrating. They've created something together, and we have these 4 rays of light shooting upward. In the Five of Wands, this always makes me feel like a bunch of kids or teenagers or whatever are at like a sparring match, like maybe a karate match, and they're all just sort of waiting their turn to spar, which I think is great energy for the Five of Wands, that idea of competition, or we're at a match, we're at a game. This Six of Wands is totally crowd surfing to me. Let me just zoom in. I feel very strongly about this. Others have seen other stuff here, but I see hands holding up and this person being sort of crowd surfed. They're being carried with their wand in the air. They're being sort of carried, celebratory style, forward. And I think that's a beautiful energy for the Six of Wands. Really captures what it means. The Seven of Wands, it's as though instead of just being like attacked, like just being on the defensive, as we often see in the Seven of Wands, this character is like rushing down the stairs from where they were on that high point, which is very interesting because typically the whole point of the Seven of Wands is that you're on the higher ground. But perhaps what you need in that moment is to come off of that high point, come down with everybody else and engage with them, right? Rather than just staying up there, king of the mountain, and like defending your territory. Maybe you need to come down and like engage. And here I feel like he could either be jumping into the fray with these people and being like, okay, I'm going to come down off this high point and engage with you. But also he could be getting ready to leap over them. Like, I don't have to stay here and like just put up with this. I can actually take direct action and get around it. I love this perspective. This Eight of Wands is so great because so often we see Eight of Wands as like this just shooting across the side from a profile view. And here we're like in it as if we are about to be or are in the midst of being shot through all of these bars of light. The perspective is so cool on this card. And here we have the Nine of Wands. Again, we have this idea of pushing forward, of perseverance and like kind of almost to the top, but not quite there. You get this idea of dedication here and of like determination and resilience. I really like that. And I also really enjoy this Ten of Wands because instead of seeing somebody who is clearly struggling, yes, this thing he's carrying seems very awkward, right? But he's managed to arrange it in a very skillful way so that he can carry the load without like falling apart, without falling down. So to me, this speaks of like creative solutions and finding ways to carry the load that work for you. I love our sweet Page of Wands. Almost looks like she could be like a ballerina or could be, is in some way exploring, right? She's chin up, facing the world head on. Love that. And our Knight of Wands look like he's about to throw a javelin. So it looks like he's winding up for a throw. So he's in the process of his active phase. And this Queen of Wands with her wide open body posture and her little cat down here at her feet. Again, they're bathed in light. There's so much beautiful light throughout this deck, right? She's bathed in light, but she's almost like, she's just very like present and confident. And then our King of Wands, who's using all the skill from earlier in the suit to like really be very specific and precise about how he uses his power, which I think is really cool. And that brings us to the cup suit. So we have our Ace of Cups. Love this with the overflowing water. It's beautiful. One of my favorite Two of Cups. I think because this to me looks like two figures that could be friends, could be a mother-daughter, could be sisters, could be wives, could be any kind of combination. We could also, again, the gender could be ambiguous here. This could be a masculine figure. What I really like here, though, is that instead of looking at each other, they're both looking in the same direction, and they both seem to be doing something similar here. They have like a similar goal, or they have aligned beliefs. There's something here that brings them together because there's something they have in common, and there's this sort of like, they're looking in the same direction, they're moving together, they're in harmony with one another. And that's really powerful because the Two of Cups is often about these harmonized or balanced relationships. Here in the Three of Cups, we don't know who these figures are. We just know that there's three different people here all raising their hands for a bit of a toast, you know, being really present in the moment. I think it's really pretty. And the Four of Cups. Again, we see this boxiness. We see that numerological representation of the square, of the cube. This idea that things are stable and steady, everything's fine, but there's this dissatisfaction in this person's posture and body language. And here we have our Five of Cups with the cups spilling down, two perfectly good cups. It's very moody. This is very RWS to me, but it gets the job done for sure. And here we again have a bubble. So remember, I talked about this in the Lovers card, and this card kind of echoes that a little bit, but it's a lot sweeter and more innocent in its way. I'm going to try to find that Lovers card, but my cards are all out of order now. Here we go. So here was the bubble we had in the Lovers card, right? And then here's the bubble we have in the Six of Cups. And this could almost even be like reminiscent back to that Lovers moment. But it's this, to me, this looks almost like we're looking into a pool and we're like reflecting on a memory, right? It really has that vibe to me. I really like it. She really does look super indecisive. In this, she looks overwhelmed by all these choices. She looks worried. She doesn't seem to know what path to take. There's an indecisiveness to sevens in general. There's a sort of like restlessness, like we're ready to make a change, but we haven't made it yet. And I'm feeling that in this image for sure. And this Eight of Cups with the neatly stacked cups rather, and this figure, the silhouette walking away with the reflection shown here. It's really powerful, even though it's got that bit of a minimalist vibe. The Nine of Cups is so fantastic to me because this is not wine, thank goodness. And this character just looks so dang happy. Like the joy in his face is so palpable, and it makes it a very easy card to read. And this 10 of Cups, yes, absolutely looks like a wedding cake, but the figures up here look like they're dancing, like they're doing some kind of partner yoga or gymnastics or something almost. It looks very dynamic and joyful, so I love that. Our Page of Cups is sort of got that like dreamy curiosity. They want to know what's in the box. They're like open to the magic, right? Like they'll believe it. If something shows up and it's not what they expect, they'll still believe it somehow. And then our Knight of Cups looks so dreamy and kind of almost distractible and kind of floaty, which is exactly how I tend to see a Knight of Cups a lot of times. And I love that the Queen of Cups is fully in the water. She is immersed. She's up to her waist, and she's just so comfortable and at home there. And then our King of Cups seems to be like comfortable in a confident way. Like he's got the waves rushing against his like throne here at the sea, and he's perfectly content in this realm between land and sea. He's perfectly content with all this raging emotion going on, and he can keep his composure, right? Love it. And then we're into the swords. So the swords feel the most, they feel very airy. This whole deck does have a lot of air energy in it, I feel like, but this one feels like it a lot. I almost get this kind of city-like skyscraper vibe or geometric vibe to this card. This is such a beautiful Two of Swords. It's so gorgeous. Now, if I remember correctly, these are all oil paintings, original oil paintings that have been, you know, formatted for the deck, but I just love this. It feels very empowered. Like she's lifting up the swords and she's like, I'm going to decide. We have a pretty classic Three of Swords here with the 3 swords piercing the heart, or the 3 points piercing the heart, but it feels somehow more stylized and less samey at the same time. This 4 of Swords feels like meditation, like just classic meditation, finding that stillness and really just being present with yourself. I love this because he's got all 5 swords, but he can't even carry them all. He's using 2 of them as stilts, which is like ridiculous. Like it's way over the top for how far he's gone to have everything. And you can see these 2 figures walking away. Adore. This is one of my favorite 6 of Swords as well. I love how the swords have become the launching thingy. I don't know what you call them. The launching thingy for the boat as they take off. So they're kind of sliding forward off of these swords that they've been on, which I think really captures the meaning of this card really well. And I love, 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 love this 7 of Swords because it's a different perspective. We're not just seeing a character doing a thing, right? We're seeing these hands coming and pulling these 5 swords away, leaving these 2 behind. But we have no context for what they're doing, why they're doing it, whether they're really their swords, whether they're just reclaiming them. We don't know. And so I feel like this asks us to ask the question, what do we know and what don't we know, you know? This 8 of Swords is poignant or punchy. I don't know what the right word is for it, but she definitely feels a lot more trapped than some other 8 of Swords, but she could just easily lift her arms and whack them away and be on her way. This 9 of Swords is so potent. It's so like the terror on his face as these lions, these sword lions just come up and they're crawling up on him. It's just palpable. And I like that in the 10 of Swords, there are 10 swords, but none of them are actually, it looks like they're piercing, but they're all ephemeral. They're not real. So you get this idea of like the dramatizing and the like feeling really like overwhelmed, but like how much of that is in your mind? Here we have our Page looking very intellectual, very like somebody who's going to dig into things to find out how and why they work. The Knight of Swords rushing forward on the wind there. The Queen feels like she's blocked off away from other people, almost like glassed off, walled off. She's holding a sword, but like you can barely see her. You get a hint of her face. There's this feeling of her being very walled off or shielded, which I think is accurate. And then we have our King of Swords, who almost looks like he's become this geometry around him. He has this sword, kind of. He has clothes, kind of. But it's also this very abstract image, as if he is perfectly at one with his element. And then we have the coin suit, the earthly suit. And this feels very financial to me. It's actually one of the reasons why I tend to reach for this deck sometimes for financial questions. It feels like it handles those very well. So we have the Ace of Coins, the 2. I like that we're balancing the 2 coins, and it's this arm reaching up out of the water. I think that's a really neat effect. I like the 3 because it appears that there are 3 figures here and they're placing a window, but it's a really cool perspective on the card. Like we're seeing it from the other side. Oops. I really enjoy this 4 also because we don't get necessarily miserly information. We do get that it's important to shelter our resources, to maybe tuck them away somewhere. Here we have our 5 of coins. This feels very stereotypical to me, very classic RWS style. It's the usual scene we're used to seeing, just a slightly different perspective, but it's very palpable the way the light is shining on these figures. This 6 of coins took me some time to sit with. It's not my favorite. Everything's growing. It's all entangled. It feels very forward movement. It feels very pippish. It feels a lot like the double 3. It feels numerological. It doesn't feel like what I'm used to seeing in the 6 of coins, and so that's really different. But I really like the idea of growth here, or double growth. That really stands out to me. Here we have somebody who looks like they're tending a garden, or like they're kind of carefully and gently gathering their harvest. This card always reminds me of somebody, but I'm not going to say it because I don't want to. I've said it before, and I don't want to mess people up. Here we have the 8 of coins. I love this. I love the focus. I love the fact that it's this last piece being put into place, but how careful and masterfully he's managing this material to put the final touches on this project. This 9 of coins is really different. I was always like, where are the coins? And it's like they're all behind her. There's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. They're like just bigger and bigger. So you get that idea of safety and being walled off, and she's got the bird. It's like, it's everything that we would expect to see. It's a really different take. And I've always really enjoyed this 10 of coins because we have this feeling of structure, of safety, of the home, of the legacy, and it's all built up and is solid. And then we have our page. I love how earthy she feels, like so grounded in the earth. She is earth of earth, and it just makes so much sense. Our knight of coins, looking so carefully at his coin here, being very cautious. Love our regal queen. I love these topiaries around her. And our king, he literally looks like a bank manager or something. Like, he's so classic to me of what I would expect from that. So those are all of the cards of the Fountain Tarot. And I really, as I said, this has been a very workhorsey kind of deck for me over the years. It's one that has never like lost its right to have a place in my collection because it just always feels really usable to me. But I do tend to reach for it the most for money questions or for really like matter-of-fact things, or when I really need something unbiased and clear, something to cut through, because it has that bit of an edge to it. It has that bit of like sharpness to it. And so I feel like it does very much feel a little bit like an air deck or a swords deck all by itself. So let's pull a random card for another write-up. I know we read the Fountain as our first example, and we'll take a look at the guidebook a little bit here. Hello. There we go. So what do we have? We have the 6 of Wands. So that's the crowd surfing one. So the guidebook is actually relatively simple. You have your table of contents, a little note from the creators, a bit about the Fountain card, the major arcana, the minor arcana, pip and court card information. So it gives you some numerological information for all the cards, the suits, some spreads, sample reading and interpretation, and then we're right into the card meanings. And the way the card meanings are structured is for every card you have the title of the card, a phrase or a single keyword, something like potent, and then a full write-up, a upright, and a reversed meaning. So 6 of Wands. So for the 6 of Wands, let me zoom us back in here. For the 6 of Wands, it says, hope and motivation. A victory is won and balance is restored. People love their champions as symbols of hope, strength, and potential in themselves. Heroes love their admirers for the recognition and the energy to reach higher and higher. Whichever role you are playing, honor and value the other. This symbiotic relationship has the potential to move all of the parties forward, but don't get too addicted. Inevitably, we must all triumph over our own individual battles. Today, however, enjoy the parade. Meaning is great news, public recognition for a victory, an achievement from which to draw courage and inspiration, renewed potential, charisma, and adoration or hope. And in reverse, it's excessive pride, false praise, betrayal, fear, and disloyalty. So yeah, admittedly, I haven't worked with the guidebook a ton. I find this deck just reads really well right out of the box. I feel like looking through it now, having had it for so many years, there's a part of me that's like, I'm kind of a little bit over it. I feel like there's other decks I reach for now more than this one, but I don't have anything that feels quite like this. I don't have anything with this kind of clean, clear, more masculine feel, more numerological feel, more geometric feel. There's something about it. Its angles and its lines and its blurry qualities and it's, I don't know, there's something very unique about it. I don't know that I could ever see myself letting it go, but I do find that I reach for it much less these days. That said, it is certainly one of the very first ones that I think about when I think about pulling something where I need to look at something financial, or I need to look at something where I really need that sort of clean, unbiased energy or reading from. And I feel like it does really, really well in that capacity. So that, my friends, was the Fountain Tarot. I'd love to hear from you if you have this deck or you don't have this deck. What do you think? Is this something that you could see yourself using? If you have it, do you already use it a lot? Beautiful fan. Let me know. I would love to hear. But it is a classic in its way, and I feel like it really holds its own among all the modern decks that have been coming out. So I would love to hear your feedback. In any case, thank you so much for joining me for this deep dive walkthrough. This was a lot of fun to film. I can't wait to hear your thoughts. An extra big thank you goes out to the Unicorn fam. Thank you so much for supporting the channel, for doing what you do to help me do what I do. It means a lot. To everybody watching right now, thank you so much for watching, for commenting, for subscribing, for liking, for clicking the bell. All the actions you do here also make a huge difference. So thank you so much, and may your magic always shine from the inside out. Bye.